Good morning. Thank you for joining us today for Innovation Destination Hartford's Keeping the Lights On, Surviving. This is the first in a three-part series. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a couple of housekeeping items. We are in webinar mode today, so your cameras are off and you are muted. Please feel free to use the Q&A module located on the bottom of your screen for questions for our panel, as we'll be taking questions throughout today's program. If you're having any issues hearing and seeing, please use the chat to let us know. And we are finally recording today's session, and we will be sending it out to all of our registered attendees after today's program. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce a woman who really needs no introduction, Nan Price, who is our website curator for Innovation Destination Hartford, or IDH, as we call it affectionately, and our content manager for the Metro Hartford Alliance. Nan, take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, and really excited about this topic. My guests this morning, as you can see on the screen, are Leslie M. Gomez, who's the driving force behind LMG Photography, and creative entrepreneur Jane Krantz, who's the owner of Afterglow Studio. So this morning, we're just going to talk about, how a business like yoga or photography can continue to keep the lights on and generate revenue, especially during a pandemic. I think I'm going to start off with you, Leslie, because you were one of the types of business owners who really took time to reevaluate and kind of rethink and pivot and adjust your business. So tell us a little bit about that, how you shifted your business basically to include branding. And how did you decide to do that and kind of pivot, but also supplement your business with that?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So during the pandemic, prior to the pandemic, I primarily did portrait and event photography. So most of my income came from organizations and corporations for event photography. And then I did a mix of portrait photography, whether it was maternity, family photography. I did headshots, and I started to really dibble into brand photography. Then when the pandemic happened and all my events started getting canceled one by one, and in the midst of that, in that moment, I began to panic, like how am I going to support my family? Like my studio was still up and running. How was I going to pay my studio rent? And
how do you break through that panic?
Well, no one was going anywhere, doing anything. So all I had time to do was kind of sit and think, right? So how can I use my skill, my gifts, my talents, my photography to help people during this difficult time? And I knew that we were shifting to this digital online world. And I said, they're going to need me now more than ever, right? Now more than ever to help them tell their stories, to help them show up online in a way that is authentic to them and one that represented them to their fullest capabilities. And most people wouldn't know how to do that because one, we know that most people, 90% of the people, are afraid of talking online or doing video or doing all of those things that we now do, going live and those things, but they still need to represent themselves, right? They still needed images to show who they were, because we were such an intimate society, right? We were so used to in-person events. We were so used to all of those things. So now the whole world is pivoting. And for entrepreneurs, they needed me at that particular moment.
So Jane, you were doing something completely different by not embracing so much the online, but like actually opening a studio in the midst of all this. Can you want to kind of talk about how that came about for you?
Yeah, as I was opening this studio too, I was like, am I crazy? Am I psycho for doing this right now? But but to me, there was like no other option. For the past like 6 years, I've been a performer and I've been a teacher in the area. So it was kind of the pandemic gave me a pause to figure out how I can kind of connect the dots and put all of those little puzzle pieces together. And for the past 6 years, it kind of felt like I was like in so many different places doing so many different things. So it was kind of cool to pause and have a moment of clarity and be like, okay, how can I make this happen? How can I support myself? And how can I keep the community going? Lots of yoga studios closed during the pandemic. I lost all of my jobs, and there were a lot of community members that were reaching out to me being like, we want yoga, we don't want to, it's so hard for people to do things virtually. I'm very thankful we're on Zoom now, I'm very thankful for like the ability to communicate that way, but with yoga, there's just a aspect that's different when you're actually in the space and connecting with each other. And a huge part of this pandemic has been mental health too, and a lot of people just need that connection in the community. So I was kind of just like, okay, how can I make this happen? I reached out to all of the clients that I've connected with over the past 6 years, and I reached out to other organizations for help. I reached out to people much like you, Leslie, like my photographer friends being like, okay, I need to just do it and make my own brand now and make it a thing, which was a little bit terrifying. But I had a friend that kept just saying to me, you know, like no risk, no reward with this. So just kind of go for it. And I was like, I can either sit here and just like worry, or I can try to make something happen. And, you know, the community is so great that I had that support behind my back. So I always had people that were, you know, encouraging me and continuing to push me and continuing to show up. So that was a really helpful aspect, just community throughout all of this.
I love that you
Yes,
both.
Jane, I agree about the showing up part, and that's what I know I had to do. It was still continually show up. So during that time while I was waiting, I actually prepped my people for personal branding. So I would book consultations, send email marketing things out. I would get on a live and say, hey, talk about you know, providing great content for them to start thinking, because not everybody had to sit down and think, right? And, you know, think about what they're going to need going forward. And I set up those consultations to when I remember, I think it was like June 20th, the world opened a little bit, and then they were like ready to go at that point. And just taking risk in general, because even I transitioned from a smaller studio to a larger studio in the middle of the pandemic. And I was like, should I do this? And I was like, what's the worst that can happen at this point?
Right. Never gonna know if you don't try. Yeah.
So I was just going to say, I like that you kind of tied in that you kept the continuity going, but what I was going to talk about was that you both mentioned pausing. And I think that's really important as an entrepreneur. I think often we think we got to keep going, got to keep the business coming, but you both really kind of took that time to pause and slow down. And I've talked to many other entrepreneurs who have had the same kind of thing where they've said, you know, this is the time that I can really reflect and work in my business. Work on my business versus in my business. I always say that wrong. So share a little bit about your experience. I mean, you already did, both of you, but I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit more of just being okay with the pause, basically.
Yeah. For me, it was just like, I mean, my main thing before this was performing and dance. Like I always taught, of course, but you know, you can't dance in a pandemic. Like you're just not you can dance, like whatever, you can dance, but you're not like professionally performing. So like you guys, I sat for a few months in that pandemic like an amoeba on the couch, and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like I just don't know. And you know, you can only do that for so long, and it gets to a certain point where you're like, how can I put all my skills together and make this happen, you know? And that pause was necessary. I think I'm much like so many other people. I like felt before the pause happened that life was just going like this. And in our culture, people have started to make a show of how busy they are. And, you know, I do this and I do this and I never rest and I'm not sleeping. And everyone's just like, say yes to everything. So I think the pause has been really great because it's shown people, okay, what can I just like leave aside and what do I need to do? Like, what is necessary for me? And you don't have to say yes to everything, and you can really simplify things to make your business more optimal for everyone. It's almost like when there's too much, it's like you're not giving attention to, like you're not giving enough attention to every little thing, if that makes sense. Like all the things you need to. It's like better to just do what you need to do and then leave the rest aside almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Leslie, did you have something to add to that?
Well, yeah, I think for me, taking that pause just helped me to find the value in a lot of things. So not only in my professional life, but also in my personal life, the value of family. This time that we were forced to take like was like gold for me, like because I was always on a goal, like a rat race, like Jane said. And I think it's important as entrepreneurs that we take a pause every now and then, right? Because I found during that pause, I found my value, like what I could really offer the world at that particular time of pausing. And again, back to as entrepreneurs, I think as we evolve as people, we change, right? So taking the pause to realize the evolution of who we are and where we want to go, what do we need to do? Who do we need to be to be the person who we see ourselves as in our business or personally? So I think it's important when pausing during the evolution of who as we evolve as people is very important, because sometimes we stay because we think we're the same person, right? And our needs are important, and we need to take the time to think about what our needs are and who we want to be in the world,
Absolutely.
and make changes as we need to, as needed.
And you both mentioned taking the risks, right? There's always this fear of failure. It's a real thing. And so how do you push through that? I mean, it's kind of like, I think you both just talked about, you just kind of do it and, you know, about what's the worst that can happen. But do you have any other advice for other people of just kind of getting through that fear of failure?
Yeah, so we have to look at failure as lessons, right? We think of failures as this bad thing, right? And we take it so hard. We are so hard on ourselves, but failures are notes. We use it, we fail, and we use it to move on as a stepping stone to get where we're going. If we don't fail, we don't know.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I always like to tell myself throughout this, like, it's really about, like, you can't focus too much on the end goal because it's never, like, nothing's ever gonna look like how you envision it, you know? It always ends up a little different. So it's, as I've been doing this, I'm realizing it's just more about the journey and like meeting people and connecting with people and just learning all these new skills. And you know, maybe it won't end up where you want it to be, but you're learning and you're doing things and you're growing through it. So I think that's just really worthwhile in itself. Yeah.
And how do you kind of bring people along your journey with you, especially during this pandemic? How are you, you know, building clientele and telling people when there's some fear, right, of being in person, there's some fear. And how do you kind of encourage people to come along with you and say, you know, I'm doing this now, I'm opening a new space, or I'm going to be shifting to branding or doing photography still, I'm still here, or I'm starting here, you know? You're both coming at this from different places.
I feel like everyone, storytelling for me in all aspects in my work and just personally helps people to connect, because a lot of people want to do what you do, but they just have this fear. We all have this fear, but we just have, all of us are different levels of identifying and just doing it anyway, if that makes any sense, right? So how do I bring people along? I just do it. I don't know. It's just a part of me, inside of me. I just do it, um, with the uh, with the thought of what could happen. But if it's not going to kill anybody or hurt anybody, just do it.
Yes. What Leslie said. That's all I have to say. What Leslie said. You just have to do it. Like, Leslie, you keep saying like you don't know if you don't try, and it's like someone's got to just try. Otherwise, like, what are we? We're all just gonna be sitting here. So
Wondering,
yeah,
wondering the what if. And I always tell my clients, if you don't jump, you don't know how high you can jump if you don't.
yeah.
You don't know your capabilities without trying.
Exactly. I was
So
scared out of my mind when I was moving from one space to another. And I'm like, kept on saying, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I'm how I'll do this. And I'm like, well, what's the worst gonna happen? Give the keys back, Leslie, give the keys back. And
right.
and that's just the reality of it, It's not the end of the world for me. It wasn't going to be the end of the world for me. I would just find another solution.
Right. And I love that that it's like failures they're not failures. It's not like you did something wrong. It's just you haven't found the right solution, or it's a chance to try something new. So we have a question of how you approach failure when you try something new, which is what I guess I was just talking about. Especially when you're pivoting and you're adding something new to your business, Leslie, or when you're starting something completely from scratch. So sorry, I'm just looking at the questions here. So I think we did talk about that, of how you approach failure. It's just jumping in and knowing that it's a learning lesson.
Yeah, jumping in and educating yourself. Like, you gotta, everybody's a beginner at something. At some point we're beginners, but as we educate yourself, I just educated myself. I made investments into myself because I knew this is what I wanted to do. I knew that I had what it took to help people. And that's just what I love to do anyway. You know what I mean? It was just a part of me. But how can I do it in this way? So facing fear is something that we always have to do in our lives. It's a part of our brain. It's a part of our makeup. Fear is there to protect us. However, it can hinder us as well a lot of times. So I always say, going forward, I surround yourself around people that's going to push you to your full potential, because a lot of times people could see the best of us before we can see the best of them.
Absolutely.
Like, your tribe is so much important in your journey, right? You can't do it by yourself.
I'm trying to pause to make sure you don't have something else to add.
I'm done.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Let's talk a little bit about kind of setting yourself up for future success. Like, okay, we've gotten through this major hurdle of, surviving through this pandemic and keeping our lights on. So like, what's next? How do you grow? How do you continue to evolve in your business?
I know for me, I have plans to kind of expand this. Well, right now the studio is semi-rental based. So, the whole idea behind this is because all yoga studios shut down, or most of them, I've had a lot of teachers who have started their own businesses throughout the pandemic. I've had them just rent this space and they can continue to run their businesses out of this space, which has been great for them. A lot of them are like, I don't want to be hired under someone else. I just want to keep going with my vision. So that's been really cool. But I'm working on expanding to, that part will stay, but also have, you know, a full-blown schedule of teachers and unlimited memberships so that the community here in itself can grow, and we'll see what happens from there. I try to take things like, you know, like one day or like monthly goals at a time, and I write them down, and that way it's a little less overwhelming for me to think so far out, because I don't know, over this past year, it's like you can't predict what's gonna happen. You really can't. There's something new that's happening every day. So smaller steps are a really nice way to break things down.
Great advice.
Yeah.
So Nan, can you repeat the question one more time?
I cannot. I don't remember what
Well, I'll just go off of what I remember. So how do you set yourself
towards the success of the future?
towards the success?
Sorry.
And
Yes, we transferred into that.
yeah, so for me,
Multitasking.
for me, it's always making goals, and again, agreeing with Jane, is taking those baby steps to those goals. Baby steps, because you will scare the hell. Oh, excuse me. You will scare yourself out of the goal, because sometimes your goals are so big, right? And then we kind of push back from it because it seems so unattainable. But when you break it down into bite-sized pieces, and you know, take those steps, you know, you can meet success in that way.
And I think having those small goals helps you keep on track too. Like you were saying, it's like you can have these huge lofty goals, but the only constant is change, right? So being able to adapt to that. I do need to circle back because we do have a question from the audience, and it is, I think it's from what Leslie was touching on. And what kind of people do you have in your tribe to get you through your work?
I call them my board of directors, and each person is for a different reason. Like, I don't, you know, I have people that I talk to about my life. I don't know if this is answering your question. And I have people that are in business that are a part of my tribe. And these are people that I connect with, and I have to feel that connection, right? I got to feel that loyalty. I have to feel that connection. And those are the people that I try to engrave, and the ones that are always pushing me, the ones that could see the best in me more than I could see in myself. And I think I touched on that before. Those are the people that I kind of keep surrounded, and vice versa, right? So it's not just a take relationship, but you know what I mean? Absolutely. I can also do that for them as well.
Jane, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, you know, when you're doing something that you're passionate about, and something like, I guess, I don't know if big is the right word, but something like, you know, yeah, big, I guess.
Big, right.
Yeah. It's almost like there are also people around you that will try to pull you down. And it, like, sometimes it's just like so shocking, and you're just like, why? But like, you know, you have to kind of push that aside, and like Leslie said, just surround yourself with the people that will constantly support you and encourage you. And you can feel that, like, you just feel it. You feel the energy and you feel that vibe. And if you don't, then that is not something that you want to focus on. And it's like, I'm such a people pleaser too, and I try to get along with everyone, but at a certain point, you just have to say, okay, I'm gonna do my thing, I'm gonna focus and bring the people in that really support this vision and support me. And that's that.
Right. Yeah. You're gonna realize that along these journeys, some of the people, they kind of fall off, right? Yeah. Like, there's a season for everything. And then some people are gonna jump on that are for you as you continue on to the journey. Just be okay with letting go. Like there's a time and a season for everything.
Yeah.
I just want to reiterate this comment because I so agree with it. You know, the term board, having people on your board to motivate you and be your cheerleaders. But I think it's also important having those people to call you out on your BS. Like I definitely have that in my tribe. Even having people to mirror back to you, I think is so important. So you can check in and say, is this crazy? Is what I'm doing crazy? Am I pricing this correctly? Am I, is this the right time? What do you think to try something different or to whatever it is? And having those people who know you so well, that's been really helpful for me. The people who know you well, but then the people who are going through something similar. I think it's so important for entrepreneurs to stick with other entrepreneurs because it can be so lonely. It doesn't have.
It can. Yep.
Yeah. I think we're winding up to the end. Do we have any kind of like final remarks from either of you? Any like final tips or advice or maybe just quick like things that you're like, I wish I'd done differently? You offered a lot, both of you.
I don't think I would do anything different.
I love that.
Anything at all. Like I'm accepting it all the lessons, the blessings, all of it, all the people that's on the journey with me. Shout out to my friend DJ Coop Boogie. She's one of my supportive friends that keeps me along the way. We keep each other on the straight and narrow. But the only thing I could just say is just don't give up. Don't be afraid to fail. Like fear is like failure. They F and F. They go hand in hand. Don't be afraid to do. You never know. From your failures, you learn something.
Right. And I've heard before, fear, face everything and run. You can take that in any direction.
Right.
Any final thoughts, Jane?
Yeah, going off of what Leslie said, just go for it. Like if you want to do something, I mean, I'm very lucky to be able to do this, lucky and privileged. So I fully acknowledge that. But if you want to do something, ask for help, put your heart into it, and like just don't think about what anyone else is gonna think, because it's your life, and you don't want to look back and say, oh, I wish I would have done that. Just now's the time. So support yourself, let others in, let others support you, and yeah, that's all I have to say.
Awesome. I love it. I know I gained a lot just from, getting to know both of you and hearing your stories and just, the people I've been interviewing throughout this entire year, people who are keeping their lights on and who are, continuing to keep their hustle going, so to speak. So this is really informative and I hope our attendees got a lot out of it. I think we wrap up. I'm trying to think. Yeah, we have the second in our series coming up. I want to say August 17th. It will be Illuminating, Thriving. And right now our confirmed guests are Brenda Miserjewski from Mizzy Cosmetics and Sean Chambers from Body Rock. And he recently opened Smash Avenue, which is like a rage room here in Connecticut. So I know some people can definitely benefit from that. And what a great concept during a pandemic too. So we hope you join us for our next event. And I want to thank Jane and Leslie so much for taking the time out of your busy morning to join us and share your wisdom and insight. You're both phenomenal and I'm grateful to have you both in my tribe.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, thank you so much.